Friends, let's delve a little into intelligence this Saturday. I'm sure you will find it interesting. Did you know that we begin creating intelligence and end up organizing it, controlling it, directing it, transforming it? And why do we do all this? Because we have feelings, sensations, and emotions. We are in constant interaction with our cognitive system that defines ideas like dreams, loss of interest, distress, pleasure, and so on. How do we do all that? Let's find some answers. Everything has something to do with the senses that we have, and the learning happens right from the birth. And they all gather a lot of information, which then the brain analyzes, creates patterns, and creates or aids in our intelligence. Let's find out more about all that this Saturday and also find some answers. Our cognitive abilities are reasoning, problem solving, planning, abstract thinking, complex idea comprehension, and learning from experience. Collectively, it gives us the intelligence. Now, they help us in our perception, and hence they build our intelligence. Our five senses, like I said, our ability to see, taste, touch, smell, and hear. What do? They help us in accumulating the data required to build our cognitive abilities. We have some additional senses also. Ever realize how we understand where our body is in space? Or touch our finger to the tip of our nose even with our eyes closed, or climb steps without actually looking at them. Now all that is due to proprioception, which tells us our movement and position of our limbs and muscles. Now why do we feel pressure when someone presses down on the skin? This is mechanosensation. Even the movement of our control, balance, tilt of the head is sensed. How do we sense stretching in muscles and tendons or keep track of our limbs? Kinesthetic receptors help us to do it. There are even receptors to detect levels of oxygen in certain arteries of our bloodstream. Why do you feel hungry? Or how do you feel the dryness in the mouth? They are all due to sensors, which are a part of our system. Stephen Hawking, an English theoretical physicist, once said, "Science facts can be much more astounding than science fiction. What we thought were in the realms of fantasy earlier are today in the domain of facts." Artificial intelligence and robotics are two such realities today, which were in the realm of fantasy a few decades back. We hear people routinely talk about everything today as powered by AI. How much of it is real? How much of it is fiction? Every being, not just humans, that has a nervous system will have some form of intelligence. Did you actually know that the first artificial intelligence program was written way back in 1963 by Joseph Rosenbaum? in MIT, and it was called ELISA, which was an interactive program that took questions from you and answered back in your own language. Something similar to the natural language processing that we see today. Human intelligence is much superior to everyone else's, and that includes the artificial intelligence. David Weishler was one of the most renowned psychologists who pioneered the field of cognitive psychology. And he once said, intelligence is the aggregate or global capacity of the individual to act purposefully, to think rationally, and to deal effectively with the environment. If one were to cross a road without looking sideways for oncoming traffic, what would we call him? Maybe less intelligent or not intelligent enough to perceive the environment? Let's look at an interesting fact. Have you ever seen people perceiving senses differently? Some people can see sounds as colors or associate certain sights with smells. This is called synesthesia. Human perception, our intelligence is built continually over our lifetime. It's not something that happens overnight. Right from the day you are born, the intelligence starts adding up. Now, given that some senses are well developed and some are not so developed or subject to injury, the data inputs vary from being to being. So your intelligence could be different from mine, and so on. Which means intelligence of perception will also vary. The way I perceive, you may not perceive. You may perceive it differently. So how then is intelligence measured? That's a question which the psychologists answer. If we compare the mental age to the chronological age, the result is the intelligence quotient, IQ. A measure of intelligence that is adjusted to age of a person, the chronological age. Obviously, if one behaves like a 6-year-old when he is actually 30 years old, be sure people will ridicule. So if the sense perceptors are providing the data, how does our brain analyze and tell the body what to do in response? The brain works like a big computer. Though it does much more than what the biggest computer can do in the biggest computer that's available in the world can do. That powerful is our human brain. Brain tissue is made up of about 100 billion nerve cells. 100 billion nerve cells or neurons. And 1 trillion supporting cells which stabilize the tissue. Neurons are the information messengers. And they use electrical impulses and chemical signals to transmit information between different areas of the brain and between brain and rest of the nervous system. So that's how the information flows. Functional basis of any biological nervous system is a reflex or a simple path along which a nerve impulse travels from one neuron to another neuron. The word path that I've used is very important, since this is the most important difference between biological intelligence and artificial intelligence that we want to create. That path is the difference. Our thoughts are not special signals, but special pathways along which nerve impulses travel. So these pathways, they change on the fly. Hence, a chain of neurons is a reflex. Our nervous system has two distinct facts. facets. One is an active network, and the active network is involved in the direct control of the real reactions, the way we react with each other, with the environment, and so on. The other is the passive network. There is an active network, there is a passive network as well. That creates the, it creates and uses the chain of neurons, but does not really control any physical action. That's a passive network. Even as these neurons do not participate in real action, the passive pathways, they act as training sites for real actions and help us learn new reflexes. Extremely interesting. The nervous system controls our individual reflexes and a host of complex reactions that form our behavioral strategies. All these reactions need energy, and that energy comes from what we eat and how we assimilate in the digestive processes. They need energy. The nervous system controls the individual reflexes, like I said, and a host of complex reactions need energy. In a way, artificial intelligence mimics the human nervous system. A fairly accurate metabolic rate, as we call it, RMR test, indicates that for any mental activity that includes sleep, the mind is active when you are even sleeping. We need 12 to 20 watts of energy, and for the whole body to work, we need about 60 to 100 watts of energy. 50% of the glucose produced in the liver and entering the bloodstream is used by the brain neurons. 50% of the glucose, of the energy that we produce inside, is used by the neurons, the brain neurons, to do all this job of transmissions and so on. But the neurons make up only 2% of our total body weight. You understand the logic here? 50% of the energy is used by the neurons, but they form only 2% of the body weight. In fact, our brain, even at the minimum activity, most minimum activity consumes the maximum energy that our body can allocate for this. Okay? But let's see how the PC works. PC also is a working something similar to a brain. Let's see how that works. An average PC in sleep mode consumes only 10 to 20 watts of energy. While when running resource-intensive programs, its power consumption varies or increases 10 to 20 times, and it can go up to 200 watts. That doesn't happen with human brain. Now, if our brain were to increase its requirements of energy like a PC does, when it's solving complex problems or thinking deeply and so on, like a PC does, we will simply die or faint at least. So, how does the human brain optimize its energy? It generates approximately the same number of impulses regardless of the situation and the current task, meaning its energy consumption remains practically constant regardless of what the person is doing. Whether his brain is into complex, deep thinking or inactive, its energy consumption is the same. And in a PC, when it does number crunching or serious calculations or serious analysis, its consumption increases 10 to 20 times. That's the difference. between a human brain and a PC. Practically, the human brain energy consumption remains constant, whether in resting or solving complex intellectual problems. Absolutely amazing. Actually, our brain is a complex art form for the way it is arranged. The path along which a nerve impulse runs depends on how exactly the docking nodes called synapses connecting the nerve cells to the neurons are triggered. These junction points called the synapses have tiny, membrane proteins or transmembrane proteins, ionotropic receptors or ion channels through which ions travel, that allow ions such as sodium, potassium to pass through the biological membranes and thereby generate nerve impulses. Friends, a biological nervous system, or how we perceive, is not a computational function like a computer, but it's a reflex. The insights into the reflex allows us greater understanding into how the artificial intelligence system should work. With that, let me leave you for this Saturday. Of course, you can recount what I have said today and may write to me as well if you need more clarifications. And the next week, I'll certainly talk to you more about artificial intelligence and how it evolves, hoping that you have understood how the human brain or human intelligence works. With that, I end this Saturday's episode and thank you. Dhanyawad and Namaskar.